Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Uh, Chronologically, we're pretty much on top of things. This is Monday, the 20th of July, and actually this should be up by Friday. So this is all within the same week. This is contemporary stuff. Uh, hey, folks, I'm really excited about this interview for a lot of reasons because it's the brain we're going
Mhm.
to talk about this wonderful thing that sits on top of my two shoulders, the brain. And I'm really honored to be with Paul Larche, who wrote The Divided Brain, help make sense of what doesn't make sense. And I've plunged into this, and to me, it's a wow. Anything with the brain is a wow, and we'll talk about this. And actually, this book that's out on Amazon, we'll talk about that. Did receive a top award from Can Reads, 2026 winner. We're going to talk about Paul. He's going to talk about his background, how eminently qualified he is to have written a book about the brain, and his background, which I'm not going to jump ahead, but he's going to tell you all about, I mean, the background and everything. It's so
Mhm.
fascinating as I plunged into, the brain. It's so fascinating because we said this, we've been BSing before he went on air. And we think we know a lot, but we don't know much.
So true.
We don't know, we think we know a lot, we don't know much at all.
Mhm.
It's so fascinating. You know what, folks out there? It's life.
Mhm.
This is your life. That was an old TV program back in the 50s with Ralph Evans. This is your life. This is your life. This thing up here is your life. And hey, listen, I'm happy to say I'm going to be 81 in a month and 3 days from now. And this thing up here is functioning at the highest level it's ever functioned. When a lot of people my age are, sitting on the front porch on the rocking chair, drinking prune juice on the rocks. Uh,
Mhm.
all that stuff is passing by, and I can't do enough with this thing. It's because it's the care and feeding of the brain, and we're going to talk about that stuff, how important it is. Before anything, I just have a commercial, folks, to subscribe now. It's so easy. It would make my day as I battle with YouTube all the time. I want, subscribers. It helps. It's an algorithm. It's all good. So just take exactly a quarter of a second out and click subscribe now. And as Clint Eastwood said, make my day. Make my day. Anyway, this elongated Johnny Carson monologue without humor is now concluded. Paul, why don't you do some background stuff because your journey is so fascinating, and then we'll jump into the divided brain.
Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. And I've been looking forward to this because you have a fascinating story and background. And I think there's a lot of parallels there. So thank you very much for the opportunity. My background, despite the fact that you gave me that beautiful introduction, is not a medical background. I'm not a PhD or a doctor. I'm a marketing and branding person. And my background really started out in radio many years ago when I was a teenager in Northern Ontario. And I was an announcer for a little while, but that you'll find out quickly was not my strength. I was more into the sales and marketing and management side of it, and I moved up the ranks relatively quickly in radio. And my paycheck was all automatically attached to the success of how advertising worked because that's what drives radio. If the local clients had success with their commercials, then I got an extra bonus at the end of the week, and I worked through that most of my first part of my career, and I was always very curious as to why some commercials worked and some didn't. And I did a lot of studying on it, and I couldn't really track down what the common denominator was until really I got to Toronto. And I see you have a picture there, a baseball picture. I had the opportunity to work with the Toronto Blue Jays and the Toronto Maple Leafs. We were doing their radio broadcasts, and that gave me the opportunity to work with some of the biggest agencies in Canada, but also some of the biggest advertisers in the world through their marketing departments and their PR departments, their research departments, and what they were doing. And I was just fascinated by why commercials never really talked too much about what they were actually selling that worked. They were actually talking more about emotion and lifestyle. Back in the 90s, a lot of these commercials that were running, if it was a car commercial, it wasn't about the horsepower. It wasn't about all of the extra features that the car had. It was usually just a picture of somebody behind the wheel looking very content. This is could be a status thing for them, or if it's a young person, it could be their first car, whatever it is, but it's just showing what somebody is feeling. Beer commercials were really big back then. And again, it was all lifestyle. It wasn't about the hops. It wasn't about the ingredients. It was about how it made you feel with your friends and dialogue and so on and so forth. All of these things really opened my eyes. So I did a lot of studying on this, and a book came out by Damasio's his name. He's a neuroscientist back in the 90s, and he had some great, fascinating research on the fact that we are not thinking machines. I know you like to talk about your brain, but we're really feeling machines that think. The feeling part comes first, and the thinking part, which humans are very good at, comes second because it's a relatively recent addition to our, to evolution is the neocortex, which I refer to as the new brain. And I refer to the old brain as everything but the neocortex, which is really the same, a lot of DNA that we've been sharing going back with reptiles 475 million years ago, just about 500 million years ago. We share a lot of that same hardware, and it's very, very well tuned, and it's primarily gauged for making us survive, thrive, and reproduce. But sometimes we run into conflicts today in the modern world we're in because we're just not faced with a lot of the threats that most of our ancestors and even our species was for most of our evolution, which were things like safety, finding your next meal, making sure that you stayed alive long enough to pass your genes on to the next generation, making sure that you were finding the proper mate to make sure that that gene procreation was going to even be better than what you left on your own. All of these things are the way the old brain was designed and worked beautifully. I mean, it's a masterpiece, really, evolution when you look at it. But in the world we live in today, where things are that the old brain was always scanning for, particularly things like safety, uh, things like making sure that we were able to feed ourselves, that we can protect our family. These things are all looked after, and so we have a mismatch there. And um, often we like to use our new brain to convince people how smart we are and to make our point when we're doing a commercial. But honestly, until you make somebody feel something, they're not going to really pay too much attention to you. So that's kind of my background and a bit about what the divided brain is in a nutshell.
Fascinating, fascinating. Again, I gotta hold stuff.
Mhm.
The Divided Brain on Amazon. The old and new, fascinating stuff. So, um, before you wrote the Divided Brain, you already kind of told us,
Oh, sorry, that's my dog.
huh?
You might hear my dog in the background.
That's fine. That's fine. Love dogs.
All
Uh,
right.
we babysat our grand dog over the weekend.
Mhm.
It's just I marvel. I truly marvel at the
Right.
intelligence. It's a Tibetan Terrier, just marvel. But anyway, you kind of touch on it a bit, and if there's anything you want to. So before you wrote the Divided Brain, what experiences in life, and you touched on, convince you that human behavior uh, really matters more than like marketing.
Absolutely. Well, again, when I made, it wasn't necessarily a eureka moment, but it's certainly over the period of a year and a half when I was working again in Toronto and working with these big agencies and big advertisers. And I really kind of figured out on my own initially that I was doing everything in reverse. When I was writing commercials for clients, I was always putting their facts, their features, their everything that they do so well, all their credentials, I would put that up front. And that's the way I was trying to sell things. Because to me, that was logical, that that's what people wanted to know and see. And often those types of commercials, ran flat. And it wasn't until, I learned that it's a 1-2 step where you do have to provide this information, but you have to make them feel something first. Then you back it up with that information because the old brain has to feel safe. Then the new brain, its de facto mode is to rationalize what the old brain has already decided. And in the book, I also talk a lot about the fact that most of our decisions are made in the old brain instantaneously, very, very fast. And again, these were all survival mechanisms. And then our new brain has to catch up. And its de facto mode is to rationalize what the old brain decides because most of the time the old brain is correct. I mean, it works very well. And in the old brain is what we would call intuition, our gut feeling, those types of things that we will go with. And most of the time it is correct, but it's not always correct. And it's good to have a mechanism in there to be able to double check it. But certainly if you're going to get a message across to somebody, they have to feel like they're in an acceptance mode of what you're going to say. And to do that, they have to feel a level of trust. Is this person going to, can I trust this person or can I trust this product or service? Are these people going to be straight with me? Is this something that I want to, somebody that I want to get into a relationship with? It doesn't matter if it's a product or service or an employee, a boss. It could be any type of relationship. They have to feel that. And then there's certain, ways that we can do that if we understand the way the old brain is scanning the environment and the world. And it's scanning the environment and the world differently than what we think about today. But if we understand it, then we can use these things to our advantage. So you asked what happened, to make me kind of really get onto this is once I figured this out, I actually quit that dream job when I was working in Toronto. It was a major broadcast company in Canada. And I bought a radio station, my own. It was very small. I didn't have that much money. We only had 6 employees. It was losing money, but I was able to start putting some of these practices into play with some of our local advertisers, and it worked. It worked, and it gave us an unfair advantage. And so our stations always did, much better than our competitors. Clients were clamoring to do business with us because they were getting results. And over time, that station became 2 stations, became 3, became 5 into bigger markets. And then we said, okay, how can we leverage this beyond just radio? So we opened up the first one was just a standard marketing agency. And then when the internet came through, it was more of a digital marketing agency. But the divided brain, the whole concept is really a metaphor. And the metaphor is what I would explain to clients in the first half hour of any client presentation. And again, that metaphor was basically that you divide the brain into 2 parts. And again, this is metaphor. This is not the left brain, right brain. This is just to help you understand human nature. And understanding that the old brain, which is most of our brain, really drives the show, makes our decisions, but at a subconscious level. It doesn't understand language. All it understands is feelings. And, its language really is stories, feelings, these types of things. The new brain does understand language, and that's where we will do everything from having sober second thoughts to decisions we may have made. But again, because it's new software, its de facto mode still is to rationalize. It rationalizes a lot. And once clients understood that, they were able to get over that hump, then they were fine to not lead with facts and figures. They were fine to lead with something that had more to do with feeling. And I talk in the book about a story, one of my first local advertisers. This is a small market, a mechanic shop. Guy just opened, Ted was his name. And he had 3 new bays. He had some new diagnostic equipment. He had AAA rated mechanics he had hired, and he was all excited about promoting it. And that's what he wanted to talk about. And I really discouraged him from talking about those things coming out of the shoot with his first advertising. I said, I need to know more about you. And right at that time is actually his wife came into the room and started complaining to him about the fact that her car is needs fixing. and it's been 2 weeks and it's sitting in his shop and he hasn't fixed his wife's car yet. And we talked about that a little bit, but I said, that's it. Like I said, you're Ted fixes everybody's car except Benita's, which was his wife's name, and that became the essence of the commercial. And that campaign ran for 20 years, where
Wow.
they would just talk about the fact that he fixes everyone's car except Benita's, and the joke. And then they would back it up with, well, we do have this mechanic and that mechanic, and we got this service, and so on and so forth. But he grew from like 3 bays to 20 bays, and exited very successfully after a while. But I mean, that's just one example, but we have tons of them. I refer to more of them in the book where people, when they heard the fact that this guy would look after his customers before he'd even have to look after his wife, so he must be pretty committed to wanting to look after his customers. And that was one of those old things that the old brain could immediately understand. And so that's just one example, but that's what we used up until I exited. We sold all of our radio stations and agencies a few years ago, and that's why I put this into the book.
Wow. Wow. That is amazing. By the way, if you see me writing, it's because I am writing. I take notes.
Mhm.
I'm one of the few interviewers out there who take notes, and you'd be happy to know, Paul, I already got 2 pages of notes.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
on you. But that's an amazing story. Uh, the mechanic and that element, what that sends. Wow. Okay. Um, did you always see yourself as becoming an entrepreneur and an author? I think I know the answer.
Well, not an author. I didn't see that right away. I definitely wanted to be an entrepreneur. I came from a entrepreneurial family. My father, it was an actual prospector, like a mining prospector, and that in northern Ontario would go into the bush and stake claims and look for precious metals and sell it. I mean, there's no more definition than entrepreneurship than that, because there's no safety net, there's no nothing. You got to go out, you got to find it, you got to promote it, you got to try to sell it. And so I really grew up in that kind of entrepreneurial environment where there were some very lean years because things just weren't clicking. But my father ended up doing very well in the end, and actually found quite a large gold deposit in northern Ontario. It became one of the largest gold mines in Canada back in the 80s. And, so I mean, that kind of gave me and my siblings a really good foundation to go, okay, if you stick with something strong enough, you persevere, you believe in yourself, and you believe in what you can accomplish, that you can accomplish great things.
Okay. I always like this kind of question. If you could talk to yourself, sit beside yourself, your 25-year-old self today, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
I often that question comes up a lot. I think I'd probably tell myself not to be so arrogant at 25. When we're young and we're starting to make some progress in the world, we think we have the world by the tail. We kind of feel that we know everything, and that we've got a good grasp on reality. And I think that comes out of our teens when, we're kind of, anybody that has teenagers will remember how they would rebel against their parents during those years. And then all of a sudden the parents became smarter as we got older and said, hey, there was a little wisdom there. But I think I would probably tell my 25-year-old self, listen, you don't know anything. Open up your mind. Don't be, don't put yourself in a position where you're not going to allow yourself to consider alternatives to ideas and suggestions. And again, this all fits into what the divided brain is, because I do talk a lot about in the book that you can disengage the old brain and the new brain, and you can do things like there it is, the two gears, where you can dislodge those gears and you can do things like critical thinking, or you can do things like really analyzing decisions that you've made and saying from a really objective position, was that really the right decision? Or could that decision have been really driven by some of the old drivers that I have in the old brain that kept me alive, or kept our species alive during a time that we don't live in before? Often people say you could be paranoid or this or that or whatnot, but all of these things again go back to how we evolved. And for, like I say, much of our existence and our evolution, we were hunter gatherers. And for the most part, we're looking for that next meal. When we did find food, we'd hold on to it as long as we could, because we didn't know where the next meal was coming from. We'd look at things at shelter. We were very tribal. We would look after our own family, our own tribe. And we would go fight the tribe next door if we needed their resources. I mean, this is just the way the brain kind of evolved. But we're still to this day making a lot of decisions that way. And that's why we live like, that's why we have so much that we don't do. Like if you look in your cupboards and you look in your closet, there's probably 80% of the clothes in there you probably never wear or hardly ever wear. You might use 10 or 20% of it. We buy shoes. I'm a guitar player, and I use this in when I speak at conferences. I have 37 guitars. I can justify, this is my new brain. I can justify why I have each one of those guitars. But at the end of the day, I really don't need 37. I know that. Like, I'm at the position now, but most of them bring me some level of contentment, and I've been able to rationalize holding on to it, because that's what the new brain does. And when I ask people that question, almost everybody will have a hand go up, and there'll be something that they either collect or they spent way too much money on, but they've been able to rationalize it. Talk about watches, for example. Like, you can spend $10 on a watch and you can spend $1 million on a watch, and they both do exactly the same thing. They tell you the time. But the reason we will spend more money is because deep down we are all looking at making sure that we're broadcasting our status to the world. And we won't admit that. And often we won't even admit it publicly to ourselves. Like these are often like subconscious drivers. But at one time, status was very important in your tribe. And it was also very important for finding a mate. And all of these things drive us today. And if we understand that, then it makes it easier for us today to go, maybe I should think twice about that. And I'm not telling people get rid of your expensive watches. If it brings you pleasure and makes you happy, then that's fine. But I try to break down the mechanics of why people do that, particularly from a branding and marketing point of view, so that when you're positioning that product or service, if you want to position it as a luxury item, you have to go status, you have to go prestige. That's the only way that it'll work, is if you can do that. Then people will say, I want to, we have mirror neurons in our head. We want to emulate what we're looking at or see if we feel that we want to be in that position. And that's what leads us to that direction.
Okay. As I'm absorbing you and taking notes, and things are flying around up here. I don't know if it's the new or the old brain up here, but
It's both.
okay, it's both. So we hear all kinds of stories. This is a little off topic. Maybe you can. We hear all kinds of stories that we don't use very much of this up here, and watch how I tie this in. I want to talk more about AI with you, maybe a bit. But so I mean, we hear all the time. We read all the time that we use just percentages of the potential of this. And your comment on that, and what scares me, and we talked about it also before we went on air, about AI, and you use it a lot. I use it a
Mhm.
lot. It's part of my life now, and it's a big help. Uh, uh, with the advent of AI, is that going to put a little bit more uh, stoppage on the development of this?
Yeah. Well, to answer your first question, are we using it to its full potential? I would say we're not with the new brain, because the new brain, the neocortex, a lot of mammals have a neocortex. Ours is just much more evolved than any other species on Earth, but in evolutionary terms, it's still fairly recent. So you got to consider it just about like new software. The old brain, I think we do use it very well because we don't even understand what's going on in that. Because you got to remember that the old brain is pretty much running everything. It's our breathing, our muscle movements, our all of these things, our desires. That is all based out of the old brain, and that is old software. That is very well tuned and fine tuned, particularly for the environments that they evolved through. The new brain, we have to actually force it, and I'd say put the clutch in, because if their two gears are connected, you got to press the clutch to disconnect those two gears and say, okay, I'm going to do a little bit of critical thinking on this, or I'm going to do and we've all had this where we've run into an issue or a problem and we don't know what to do and we get afraid. But often we'll sit down and we'll just sometimes it could be like you with a piece of paper and a pen, and you're just start kind of thinking through the issue, and you're going to get very much into a flow, and you're going to concentrate on that issue. And now you're engaging your new brain, and that new brain can do amazing things. And that's what has allowed our species to develop science and move to where we are today, is engaging those new brains. I mean, imagine when you think of Einstein, coming up with the whole theory of uh, his theories back in 1905, and quantum physics, and just the way gravity works, and that these were thought experiment. These were all in the new brain. That was not the old brain coming up with that. But so some people can really engage it more than others, and you can get into a habit of doing it. Like, you can reflect at the end of the day about some of the decisions you made, and ask yourself, could some of those have been driven by biases? Could some of those have been driven by some of my old primal drivers that my old brain carries? And often you will tell yourself, yeah, that's probably that. And I bring it more to a marketing and branding and business point of view, because often this has to do with purchasing something. Like, did you purchase something, and then do you feel that you made the right purchase, or will you consider purchasing something if I'm dealing with an advertiser that's selling a product or service? So, to answer your first question, we don't by default use our new brain well. And you have to engage it, because otherwise it will just rationalize everything that your old brain decides to go with. And we see that today in everything from conversations to politics to whatnot, where people will really not want to change their mind, because they've already decided that they're going to position themselves somewhere, and that their old brain becomes very stubborn in not wanting to admit that it could be wrong, because admitting that you were wrong, and at one point, was not advantageous to our evolution. You wanted to always be right, and but the only ones that were right, when you think about it, are the ones that survived. Right? If you didn't pay attention to a rustle in the bush and you got eaten, you didn't pass your genes on to the next generation. Right? So, I mean, just through all of this evolution, we're so tuned to that. I hope that makes sense to people.
Well, it makes sense to me. You said, Paul, you said something really profound. Um, I'm a huge fan of Albert Einstein,
Mhm.
and I sit here and ponder. I reached for something while you were talking.
Mhm.
25, 30 years ago, I found this online. It's Einstein's eyes.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
And what fascinates me, and we can tie this again, this is off
Mhm.
topic. I'm just what fascinates me, what always fascinated me about Einstein is he conceived all this relativity stuff, 1900, 1905, whatever.
Mhm.
long before Google and the internet. So I just have such a hard time trying to process how a brain, without any help, without anything, there's nothing out there to help him, how he can conceive of gravity and space,
Mhm.
relativity and time. That fascinates me. And I'll tell you what I did do. I'll tell you what I did do when I found this. And I wrote my first book, Vichy Water, which really wasn't much. It wasn't anything.
Mhm.
But I got a kick out of writing. So I actually, because I'm very spiritual, I actually channeled Albert Einstein. Just like I'm talking to you, I started talking to him.
Yeah. Mhm.
And it's like I'm talking to you, and I said, dear Albert, I don't know how busy you are these days, because wherever you are, blah blah. But
Mhm.
and I'm going to channel you now, and try to reach out to you spiritually as best I can. And I'll be really honest with you, I care nothing about relativity, so you don't need to impart nothing.
Mhm.
I care nothing about that. But if there's some pieces of energy you could send me, however it
Sure.
works, to help me become a better writer, uh,
Mhm.
I really
Well,
appreciate
that's a great approach, and again, Einstein and well, anybody that has made any type of discovery, I respect a lot, especially if it's novel, hasn't been done before. But again, that is primarily through again engaging that neocortex, the newer part of our brain that can do reason, can do logic. And he was able to, just through really thought experiments, like just in his head, thinking and imagining certain things, like if he would put himself in a rocket ship or an elevator or a train that was moving, and he was able to visualize how the speed of light being constant. I mean, these are all things that are all new brain. That's not old brain. The old brain wouldn't even can't understand that. And in the book, I actually have a whole chapter on errors in thinking, I call it, because we do, there is a mismatch in the world we live in today, and we do errors in thinking because we're not taking advantage of that new brain as much as we should. We're leaving it in its default mode of just rationalizing our decisions when it can do so much more if we're prepared to engage it. And if you're prepared to engage it, and I know that you do a lot just by talking to you and seeing how sharp and vital you are, that you're engaging your new brain all the time, and that's amazing. But doing that will keep you very sharp. It's going to keep, I think it'll make you healthier. And if anything, it's just going to make you understand the way the world ticks. And you're going to find out very quickly that most people don't understand it. Most 99% of people don't understand it. Neuroscientists understand it. Great philosophers may understand it, but most people don't.
yeah, and it's there. You know what?
It's absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
right there for all of us. None of us.
Hmm.
The nice thing about that kind of stuff, it's available to all of us, as is
Hmm.
spirit. I call
Hmm.
it spirit.
Yeah.
I came up with what I call the antenna theory, that we
Hmm.
all have this antenna. And by the way, you know, uh, uh, I think spirit is tied into the brain, and I'm
Hmm.
developing this as I'm listening to you. We all have this antenna, new brain, old brain. We all have this antenna, and I won't get into all that. But a bunch of years ago, something came from deep outer space into my brain. It was a spiritual thing, and there isn't a scientist on earth can explain how it happened, how how something popped into my brain, and 8, 10 hours later, there it is in real life. It was so extraordinary, and that set me on a whole new path in my life.
Hmm.
That there's something out there beyond, and that's what you're writing about. There's
Yeah.
something out there beyond. It's there, but it's
There's a
beyond.
lot we don't know, but we certainly, our brains have been predisposed to accept that there may be something beyond what we understand. And again, from an evolutionary point of view, that would have paid dividends because for the most part, it would have kept us grounded in opportunities to grow. And it's one of those things that we see across all cultures. We can fly around the world today, but it wasn't that long ago where nobody really moved, and cultures, could be any part of the world. When you studied them 100 years ago, 200 years ago, a lot of them had their own uh, faiths, their own beliefs, but a lot of them were very similar. They might have called things different names, but these things were all very much similar. And when you see that, you understand that has to be a human thing. That has to be something that through our new brain and old brain, the brain has felt that this will allow us to survive and thrive, and it definitely works for sure.
Okay. Take a little bit of a deep breath. We're going to go into another segment, marketing and customers and stuff. And before we do that, really off topic, I like these questions. Here goes. I forewarned you. I think I did. Okay, here goes. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with. Could be one, two, three, none, whatever.
Well, living or dead, like I said, I'm a musician, amateur musician. I've played in bands all my life, but I've always been very fascinated by Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones, who's 83 or 84 years old now, and obviously he's not dead, but I honestly would love to have a cocktail with him in a bar just to talk about. I've read his book, and I love the Stones, and I think he's just had as much as people think he's kind of a cockroach, how is he still alive with all of that battering his body at? He's
Yeah,
very sharp. He's a very sharp individual, and if you ever watch some of his interviews, you'd be surprised. But I just love his philosophy about life and in the world, and I understand how much enjoyment he gets out of being, playing on stage. And when he goes out and, they're touring at that age, it's not for the money. They just love to do it. Like for them, it takes them to a spiritual place. And they talk about that. Any of old musicians that are still able to do it and can hold on to it, it's absolutely amazing that they can. But, that I'd love to have that conversation with him. To
great
you
answer.
know, to, he talked about in a book once when he comes out on stage and starts playing an opening riff to Jumpin' Jack Flash or whatever, that he just feels like he's 10 feet off the ground, and
Yeah,
in a happy place, and that there's nothing wrong with wanting to do that well into your 80s.
sure. I'm 2 miles away from this guy, Bruce Springsteen.
Mm,
He's literally two
same, yeah,
miles, 2 miles down the road.
yeah,
Uh, I'm 20 minutes from Asbury Park. The birth of that whole,
yeah,
that's where Springsteen was kind of born, and Bon
that's
Jovi,
right, yeah.
that
And a
whole.
lot of those, and most of the band that are still alive are still together.
Yeah, they're all together. They lost
Hmm.
they
Hmm.
lost a couple guys. Well, they
Hmm.
lost Clarence,
Yeah.
the big
Hmm.
man, in 2011, actually.
Yeah.
Um,
But he'd be another good example. Like again, I think he recently sold, I think not, if not all, he sold half of his writing
his
uh,
catalog.
catalog, and I mean that for like lots of money. I mean, he does not. He's not worried about money. He is him and his family are fine, but he still loves to tour as long as his health holds up, he says. And my wife and I saw him in Toronto. I think it was last year. I think just that most recent tour he had, and they went on for 3.5 hours, and nobody sat in their seat, and it was just like you were in a church. It was spiritual in that sense, but it was through music and his stories and his delivery, and just the sheer awesomeness. But those things are, again, things that very much the old brain and the new brain like.
Funny, when I started my journalism 11 years ago, I got involved with did a lot of music journalism, and one day one of my magazines I was writing for, the publisher got permission to interview one of Bruce's best friends in the world, and I was thrilled about that. And we went to the house and apartment, blah, blah,
Hmm.
blah. And he's a busy guy, and so we're waiting. He's on the phone half the time, and then my publisher calls me over and shows me a note that Bruce wrote to his agent, John Landau, a long time ago, and Bruce
Hmm.
wanted like 50 movies to watch to help him with lyrics and stuff, and it was under glass on a wall, and I took a picture of it before he came back. And when I went home that night, I got goosebumps up and down my arms, like, another spiritual thing, because basically
Hmm.
every movie that Bruce wanted, I had already ordered for my own. Because when I do the exercise bike upstairs, it's boring, and I like to watch old movies. So the movies that I had ordered over the last year or two previous from Amazon, Bruce is one
Hmm.
of those movies to watch, which included uh, East of Eden, uh,
Hmm.
It's a Wonderful Life, Gentleman's Agreement, etc. The Searchers, John Wayne. And so his taste were my taste.
Hmm.
I thought that was anyway. Um,
Yeah,
one other quick question.
hmm,
What we'll also do, because there's no way we're going to get to everything.
I
Uh,
understand. Yeah, that's
yeah,
fine. This has
well,
been
it
a
is fun.
fascinating conversation.
Yeah, this is great stuff, which means you're going to come back. I'd love you to come
I'd
back and
love to. Yeah.
finish this. The other cute question I'd like to ask, do you have any favorite movies? We talked about movies a whole bunch.
Uh, my favorite movies have changed over time, but I really I really enjoyed the original Wall Street movie that came out back in the 80s. I
Think
although
Greed is
they,
good? Is that it? Greed is good?
yeah, well, yeah, and although I didn't, the lead character was a villain, it just really, I just love the dichotomy between the older and the younger stockbroker and understanding the way they looked at the world, and I just thought the movie was really well paced and put together, and I every once in a while I'll watch it. I know you've talked about how many times you've watched me. I don't think I've watched it, that many times, but I've certainly watched it maybe 30 or 40 times. I just thought it was a very well crafted movie, and I'm just a fan of the way that that was put together, and I'm riveted from the beginning to the end.
Okay. Okay, good. All right, a couple marketing questions, and then
Mhm.
we'll kind of wind down because there's just too much here, and we can't rush
Mhm.
the brain, So, uh, what's some of the biggest mistakes businesses make when they're trying? This is an important question. When they're trying to attract customers, what big mistake do they make?
Well, the biggest one that I always point out, and this is what the whole book is that don't lead with facts and figures, lead with feeling. You need your facts and figures, but in a support role. And again, particularly people who are new entrepreneurs, that might be starting up a new business or a new product, or it could be a website, whatever they're doing. They often feel that they have to lead with all their credentials first, and that's the biggest thing. And one of the lines I've used for years is like, we buy on emotion and we justify with fact. So you need that, you need the 1-2 punch. They're both important, but more often than not, particularly people who haven't, anybody that is in your audience that is a marketer already understands this for the most part. If they're a good brand or marketer and they've done some research on it. They know how it works, but by and large, most of the population doesn't. And and that's what I did wrong for the early part of my career, is I put the facts and features first. And if anything, if I had any feeling to it, it either wasn't there or was too late. So that the old brain didn't open up to accept that, hey, listen, I might want to listen to what this person has to say. And I feel that I can trust what they're saying, and they're giving me all of these cues that I can't necessarily put my finger on, but I believe that this person is being sincere, and I'm going to follow this through. And once that decision is made, then you need the facts and figures, because the new brain is going to rationalize it. And the new brain needs those facts and figures. If you don't have it, then the new brain's going to just say, no, there's nothing there. Let's just move on. This guy is, selling us, smoke. He's, he's snake oil. He's getting us all emotional, but there's nothing behind it. So you do need the 1-2 punch, but you need it in that order. So that's what I would want people to take away from this conversation.
I love that. Lead with feeling. As I'm listening to you, Paul, in my creating some of my social media posts to try to sell my book, I always throw in facts and figures. Hey, 13 national awards, bum.
Put it at the end. Put it at the end.
I'm listening to you, and
Yeah.
my mind is you're impacting me.
Yeah.
As I'm listening to you. So
put it in the last line of and if anybody goes to my LinkedIn account, I put a lot of content out on this, but you'll read the whole thing, and in the last line I will mention that about the book, and I will mention about the award that it won, and if they want more information, where they can go. But it's the last line, so that if somebody feels that they got something that they feel, first of all, I want them to feel that they're getting something positive out of it, that they can use this information. And everything I put out there, is sincerely coming from the heart, from a good place. And then at the end of that, then I will just back it up with that little thing. So it allows their new brain to go, okay, well, this guy must kind of know what he's talking about, because, his peer group or other experts have already validated it. So it just makes that the door is open, and now you've helped close the door. You're in now. You're in.
Okay. So the continuation, and actually we'll make this the last. There's just too much here.
Mm.
There's too much to you, and there's too much you have to give. And this stuff is just, well, it's you know what? It's life, and it's real, and I'm sitting here chomping at the bit, because what you're saying makes so much sense, and you've already changed my thinking, by the way. So that's the
Wow.
power.
Well, thank you.
No, you really have. So that's the power of this. Lead with feeling. If I took anything away, lead with feeling. Wow. So I'll keep you posted. I got to experiment with that. But the last the last question: can a great product fail?
Yes.
Because of
Many have. Yeah. And often because they were leading too much with stuff that the old brain just didn't think was engaging. And there's anybody who studies business very well will often know that the person who invents a product or service is not necessarily the one that will make all the money with it. It's often the second or third iteration of it, because they didn't promote it in the correct way. And a lot of companies are well known at being patient and waiting for others to maybe make a few mistakes in the way they position it, and then they take that idea, the concept, and then they'll wrap it. Apple was very, very good at this. They were very rarely the leaders, even though we think of them as being innovative. Somebody else usually invented the technology that they really discovered. But they were smart enough. Steve Jobs and his team were smart enough to understand that this product or service or whatever it is can be life changing, but nobody has marketed it properly. So we have to wrap it in feeling. So we have to wrap this in, when they put out the first, iPod, it was 1,000 songs in your pocket. Like people couldn't, like that was magic. How could you get your head around that? Or putting an iPad in or their first, thin laptop into a manila envelope. These are things that were all emotional. They didn't, there wasn't facts or figures. It was just, wow, how can that happen? And then at the end, you'd always notice that they put up on the screen, and they still do it to this day, all of those facts and figures numbers. And that's again to allow the new brain to justify why you're going to spend an exorbitant amount of money on their product. So that's one good example of, they were not, necessarily the ones to invent it. And often they're late to the game. They're late to the game with AI right now. But I'm sure they're going to catch up quickly and come up with some very novel ways of repositioning it, because they're going to go after the old brain, not the new brain.
Okay. Last, just just a few comments. You said AI. We talked about it a few different times. Do you love it? Are you scared of it?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an amazing tool. But what concerns me about it as it gets more and more advanced is everything I've talked about today. That our decision making is based on our old brain that was a product of evolution in a different environment that we're currently in today. And the AI knows that. It's because it understands psychology, it understands neuroscience, it understands behavioral economics, it understands all these things better than we can. So it can manipulate us very, very easily if we're not engaging our new brain to understand that it just may be doing that. So that's where I would caution people to, again, anytime you're, going through social media or getting anything fed to you, it's usually through an AI generated algorithm that is trying to tap into your old brain and bypass your new brain. And it's just looking for that quick reaction. It's all going on feeling, and it knows that. And that's a trap that unless you understand how to engage the new brain, you can really easily get carried away with. So that's what concerns me about it. Now, the flip side of it is, I mean, it's amazing to be living today and seeing what's going to happen with this, because these advancements will likely be able to do some great things when it comes to medicine just understanding some of the mysteries of the world that we don't understand, like the brain. It might find out that there's a much easier metaphor to understand how the brain works and can explain it better than I can. But so I love it, but I also am, and I tell people you just have to be careful of what you're getting fed. And sometimes you got to ask yourself, engage that new brain and saying, who's giving me this information? Is there any possible motive behind why they may be wanting to give me this information? Are they trying to sell me something? Are they trying to take me down a road where I will, back up their belief? It could be political, it could be otherwise. And more often than not, when you ask those questions, you'll go, yeah, I'm trying to be led here. And I got to, and maybe at the end of the day, you still want to be led. That's fine if you've done your research and you've done a little bit of critical thinking, but at least make sure that you're a little bit skeptical of what you get now, because it's all coming from AI.
Well said. By the way, it's been around a long time. I think it was a Canadian, Arthur Clarke, who wrote 2001.
Yeah, not sure if he was Canadian or not, but
I have to look it
yeah,
up, but
Canada has a lot of great history with AI.
sure does.
Yeah, Jeff Hennon from University of Toronto was one of the pioneers, and
Correct.
a lot of the the AI companies that are out there today, their prodigy comes out of his classes and
Yeah.
his group. Yeah.
I wanted actually a year or so ago, I wanted to reach out to him. I kind of to see if I could interview him.
Hmm.
Oh, brilliant guy and
Hmm.
but I know that when I saw the movie 2001 back in the 60s,
Hmm.
HAL, the computer on the
Yeah.
ship tries to take it over. And I think a lot of us forget AI ain't new. AI been around a long, long,
Yeah.
long time, and it was in a movie in the 60s.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh, there's been many science fiction writings about it over, I mean, great science fiction writers nailed it.
Yeah,
And we're still in its infancy, which is kind of scary.
scary, scary. And with that,
Mhm.
scary, great way to end this segment. You are amazing, and I must have got about 6 pages of notes here. Thank you for that, and thank
Thank you
you.
for having me on.
Yeah, no, this was great, Paul, and we'll talk about it off camera. You maybe come back and we can finish some stuff because it's endless and the depth and the breadth. I marvel at you, truly, just fascinating stuff, and I'm so glad to Sasha Stoltz, PR, who put us together. I haven't met her yet, but she's great and put us together. So I'm thanking her.
We'll let her know.
We're going to let her know this was great. So thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you. Do come back. I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. We'll do a 2-minute wrap. But thank you, Paul. This was great.
Thank you.